where you're going to take you into drug addiction again. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you reform? And that's what, I mean, most of the time at a family meeting, after 30 days, family will come in and say, oh, the son I lost at 15, there he is. Oops. Because that means we're going back to start this thing over again. I don't want to do that. I don't want to reform. I don't want to go back to where we were. But that's a lot of times the only thing we're familiar with, right? We know what it was like before we got into the problem, so if I just get back to that. But see, I believe that God's going to use the worst things in our lives sometimes to form us into the best things we can be. So addiction is going to take me somewhere. It's going to form me into something better. I don't want to go back to before I was formed by that. I want to be formed by it. I want to be transformed. And the word transform means to be metamorphosized. It means to be made into a new form. It's not like going back to my old form. It's not about getting into somebody else's form. It's about becoming something that has never been seen before. Something that God uniquely has created me and brought me here into this earth and born me for, that this is what I'm to do. And that's intimidating, right? Because it's uncomfortable to be something different than anyone else has ever been, or even that I've ever been before. That's scary. And a lot of times with addiction, one of the key things that happens is relapse in the process. And relapse typically is created by fear. If you're ever learning something new and you begin to succeed in it, the first thing you feel is fear that you're succeeding. There's nothing, succeeding is much more dangerous and scary to us than failing. Failing we know. Failing takes us to where we've been before. Succeeding takes place when we've never been before. And so there's fear associated with that. So relapse is about getting into this new thing. I kind of get intimidated by it, and then I just want to fall back into my old self because that's comfortable. That takes me back to what I'm accustomed to. And so my faith requires me, and this identity transformation requires me to begin to allow God to have this vision that I'm going to become something completely new, a metamorphosized thing. And that's really the hope and the dream of recovery. And, most of the guys, it's interesting, most of the guys, when I hear their testimonies after they go through the program, they're thankful for their addiction because it opened up doors that they would have never gone through otherwise. It brought things in their lives that they would never face. And it was painful, there's scars, there's damage, there's hurt, there's sometimes damage that will never be repaired. But the transformation that happened through that, the formation that happened through that, the radical changes that happened in them is something that they don't believe they could ever have gotten where they are in the relationship with God without having gone through that experience. And they embrace it. And so it's not shame anymore. It's not embarrassment. It's interesting. I watch guys. The guys who can comfortably talk about their addiction are the guys who do well. The people who are always afraid that somebody's going to find out about it are the people who don't do well. And I got friends who are on both camps. And so really understanding that, I think, is important. Now, a couple of things, practical things. I'll talk about a couple of practical things. And one thing I want to talk about is this kind of some core things at His Way that we do that I think, as you think about ministering to people in addiction, are helpful principles. Okay, so I just want to, and I want you to understand this. When I got involved with starting His Way in 2007, I'd never been a part of a residential program in my life, so I didn't have any idea. I hadn't been an addict, I hadn't been in a program. Most of the people who start residential recovery programs went through recovery, and then they want to create what they went through to help other people, and that's how they get into it, but I had never done that. And all of a sudden I was assigned the responsibility of coming up with a structure, a plan, a program, rules and regulations, guidelines, all this kind of stuff to create this program. And I had no idea. One of the first things I did, the program had already kind of gotten started, and then I kind of was volunteering, and I got more involved with it, and I eventually was asked to kind of put together the program and create the structure for it. And so one of the first things I did, I think we had about 16 guys in the program at that time, and I went and interviewed all of them because I wanted to ask them the question, okay, what do you think would be helpful to you in recovery? What would be the things to be helpful? And I interviewed every single one of them. I got their notes, and some had, I was in the program a while back, and they helped, and they were really good at this, or whatever those things were. I put all that together. Basically, taking all their ideas, we put together the program, and then ironically, all 16 of them got dismissed for violating the rules that they told me they should follow. So we ended up with nobody in the program. And of course, the board of directors was really happy with me at that point. Good job. But it was an important process to kind of figure out what it's going to take to be successful here. And so I wanted to give you, I guess I got 4 quick things I think are helpful. And they have to do with what happens in His way, and I think needs to happen as we help and reach out to this community. And I'll say one other thing about it. I don't think there's a better opportunity to share the gospel than there is in the community that we're talking about. I spent a lot of my years ministering to people who didn't realize how desperately they needed what I was bringing. And so I had to spend all my time convincing them that they had a problem in order to tell them, now I have a solution to your problem. So it's made it sound like every sermon sounds like bad news all the time. So I always have to tell you what's wrong with you. So I convince you now that this is what's right. This is how you get it, right? Well, with addicts, that's not a question anymore, right? They're crawling to you going, my life's a wreck, I need help. I don't have the question of that I got my act together, that's gone. I mean, I know that, right? That issue's done. I know what the issue is. And so there's a desperateness to that. And we talk a lot in recovery about the gift of desperation. That can be the greatest gift that God ever gives us, is the realization that we need Him. So the first thing I would say at His way that's critical is that there's a Christ culture. And what I mean by that is that it's not just about having a Bible class. It's not just, it's the air you breathe. It's the culture of everything you do. It's how you eat. It's how you interact with your roommate. It's everything you do is saturated with Christ. There's a lot of programs and faith-based programs that tend to be really focused on kind of ramming home the Bible, memorize scripture constantly. We're ramming home the Bible down your throat and all that kind of thing. And see, I just wanted to create a culture in which it was so attractive that everybody would want it, not one in which you had to force feed it down people who didn't really want it but have to because it's required for the program. And I'm really thankful that that's kind of the spirit of things, that I watch it every day. I mean, I've talked to guys who have zero experience with a relationship with God, have zero religious experience at all, and they'll say, the first time I stepped on this campus, I knew God was here. I knew it was about Jesus. I smelled it. I felt it. I breathed it. I tasted it. It was everything it's about. And it's not that the community is perfect by any stretch, but we always go back to the same principles. We always go back to the same things. And it's just everything is saturated with Christ. And so I think that's really critically important. Second thing is about connection. I heard a talk a number of years ago, and he emphasized that in addiction, the real problem that it's not so much about sobriety as it's about connection. That addicts are disconnected and they need to get connected. In fact, COVID's been terrible for people in addiction. I mean, I remember pre-COVID, I was talking about 70,000 Americans dying every year because of drug addiction. After COVID, I was talking about 100,000 Americans dying because of addiction. That's how, within 1 year, you had a 33% jump in deaths because they were disconnected. Suicide rates went through the roof, right? All those things happened because of disconnection. And so I think connection's critically important, being able to be related, being able to be embraced, being able to be loved, and to be able to love, and just to have that experience, have that connection is the people who are desperate for that. And one of the things I love about what happens in His way is that we help guys who have been typically disconnected from society not only connect with people like themselves, but connect with people not like themselves, with the church, with people who they may feel very uncomfortable around. Because a lot of us don't talk like them, act like them, dress like them, and yet sometimes they find their best friends among us. And I remember one guy came to me. We had set up a dental appointment for him because his teeth were in bad shape, which most addicts are. And he got to go see this dentist, and he was treated like royalty. He said, I was at that dentist's office just a few months ago, and they ran me out of the parking lot and told me never to come back again. But now he's feeling connected to the very people who rejected him, right? And that's a part of just being connected with society. One of the things I love about Huntsville, and I love this because the character of the people here are great, is that there's a real warmth and reception. With the guys who are trying to do something to change their lives, people were quick. I mean, we get all our guys get jobs when they come in our program for 60 days. They get a job, and guys are kind of afraid. Do I tell them I have a substance abuse problem? Absolutely, because they're going to probably love to give you a chance because they want to be a part of helping people change. I mean, I've seen that over and over again in this community, and so don't be ashamed of it. Embrace it and be connected. And so I think that's really important. One of the biggest things I would say is structure is really important. Most addicts have never lived structured. I mean, that's really one of the real issues. And so helping them develop a real structure for their life is important. As you help people, help them, set a time when they're going to get up, set a time when they go to bed, set a time when they're going to eat, set a time when they start developing structure. Because to be honest, most addicts have only ever reacted to life. They've never planned for a thing. They've never intentionally done anything. They just reacted to the next phone call, the next whatever happened, whatever the next, they're just going to react to whatever. And so they've never learned how to live intentionally, to live with structure in their life. And so helping them to build structure, that's a big part of our program, is just, and one